Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff Operations Officer, assisted the National Security Team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the Vice Commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
What the purpose is about this entire project, it's not simply to raise class consciousness, but to win socialism. And obviously raising class consciousness is a critical part of that. But making sure that we have candidates that both understand that and are willing to put that forward at every which moment that they have, at every which opportunity that they're given. We have to continue to elect more socialists. And we have to ensure that we are unapologetic about our socialism. There are also other issues that we firmly believe in, whether it's BDS, right, or whether it's the end goal of ceasing the means of production, where we do not have the same level of support at this very moment. And what I want to say is that it is critical that in the way that we organize, in the way that we set up our work and our priorities, that we do not leave any one issue for the other, that we do not meet a moment and only look at what people are ready for.
Welcome back to More War Monday, folks. The Rob Maness Show's live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Well, America's war with communism within is raging again in full view. That is the New York City Democrat Party's nominee for mayor, Zoran Mamdani. According to G. Van Fleet on X, who I've had on the show before, Mamdani isn't just a woke communist. He's a textbook Marxist. His agenda goes far beyond identity politics. It's rooted in the classic Marxist goal of seizing the means of production. You heard him say it right there. Abolishing private property and placing factories, resources, and land under the control of, wait for it, the state. He is a full-fledged, flag-waving, red flag communist, and his project is nothing less than transforming America into a totalitarian regime. Wow. And my guest today fully understands Mamdani because he has lived it. Alexander G. Markovsky is a scholar of Marxism and a senior fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. He's the author of America Did Not Defeat Communism. She Adopted It. His more than 100 articles have appeared on The Hill, in The American Thinker, and his latest, Democratic Socialism, the philosophy of poverty in real clear defense, is coming. He's also the owner and CEO of Litwin Management Services, LLC. It specializes in managing of large energy-related projects. Mr. Markovsky was born in 1944 in the Soviet Union to the family of construction executive and high-ranking Communist Party officials. He has an MS in structural engineering from Moscow and Kharkov universities. He holds a PhD in economics and political science and has a degree in English for foreign professionals from Columbia University, which is the heart of Marxism in this country, I believe. Alex, welcome to the Rob Maness Show, sir. Thank you for agreeing to join me today.
Thank you for inviting me.
This is a huge issue, Alex, and this shift that a lot of us have been talking about, that grew up in the Cold War, that served during the Cold War, like my dad did, my older brother did, like I did, where we were the last line of defense, really, against the communists from the Soviet Union, potentially being able to take over the entire world and destroy all freedom. It's now not just taken root, but it's raised its ugly head out of the womb in New York City. As of somebody that was born in the USSR and grew up there, what are your thoughts on that in general?
Well, it sounds very familiar, I have to tell you. I've been writing about it for the last 20 years, born in America, of coming socialism. The problem with it, as I can see, first of all, is education or lack of it. Americans don't understand socialism. It sounds pretty good, but in reality, it's exactly what you just described. What we're trying to do, we're trying to destroy American democracy. What we have to understand that American free enterprise system, or we call it capitalism, is a foundation of our freedom. It is a foundation of our democracy. We call it industrial democracy. Mm-hmm. And why we call it industrial democracy? Because economic freedom and our democracy are intertwined. You can't have economic freedom without democracy, and you're not going to have democracy without economic freedom. So when somebody is trying to destroy our economic system, therefore, he is destroying our democracy as well. That's what this is about.
Yeah. I read off G. Van Fleet's concerns from her, one of her initial posts on X about that. Now, she comes from a Maoist background, I believe. Somebody that's from the Soviet background. Your thoughts pretty much match up in line with hers, what she said. He's going after the means of production. That's the end goal, to remove private property rights, et cetera, et cetera.
But it's only intermediate goal. The final goal, as I described, it is socialism is a philosophy of poverty. Why would I say? Look, socialism is about economic equality. However, if you come to think about it, economic equality can only be in poverty. There is no equality in wealth. Wealth cannot possibly distribute it equally. Therefore, what they're trying to do, they are promising a distribution of wealth. But let's think about it again. It's not creation of wealth. It's distribution of wealth that capitalism created. So eventually you have to run out of wealth if you don't produce wealth, but you distribute what you have, and given that population is growing and amount of distribution stay more or less the same, so eventually you will get to poverty. And that's what the goal of socialism is. Final goal.
Now, Alex, in your article, I'm going to paraphrase what you quoted Alexander Solzhenitsyn about, that essentially for Russia, socialism was a dead dog, but unfortunately in the West, it's still a living lion.
Right.
Yeah. Right. So why? What's the background on that comment about socialism being a dead dog in the Soviet Union? Does that go very far back in the Soviet Union's history, or is that something that's more recent?
It goes back probably to 1991 when they ran out of other people's money, as Margaret Thatcher, you remember, used to say. Mm-hmm. And so economically, socialism collapsed. Subsequently, it collapsed ideologically. However, what Solzhenitsyn was referring to, that it moved to the United States, they find a new life and vitality in the Democratic Party. You see, what I'm trying to say about that guy, who keep forgetting his name, I don't care about it much. It's not individual. He is product of his party. So what the tragedy of America is that major political party become socialist party and try to destroy capitalism, and subsequently they will have to install a dictatorship. That's what Solzhenitsyn been warning us about for quite a while, by the way, in his books and his speeches. And well, it's now it's before us. And it's been coming for quite a while. If you remember, that guy was, let me keep forgetting his name. He was Norman Thomas. He ran for president permanently, I would say, ran for president of the United States from Socialist Party. Mm-hmm. And what he said in 1944, he said, I no longer need to run as a presidential candidate for Socialist Party. The Democratic Party has adopted our platform. Nobody could say it better.
Yeah, it's very interesting because Zoran, he says that instead, he says, I'm a democratic socialist is what he says, but he doesn't say I'm a member of the Democratic Socialist Party of America, which exists, I think is headquartered pretty close to New York City, because he doesn't have to, right? I understand.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
That's very unfortunate. What you also write in your article, and we'll have to take a break here in a couple minutes, but let's talk about this. Define, this guy says he's a BMW Bolshevik, is what he says. There's a little ad from him that uses that phrase. And you talk about in your most recent article, there's the Bolsheviks and the Mensheviks. What's the difference between the two? And it seems like the Mensheviks, the way I read it, are pretty similar to what we're seeing in the Democrat Party today.
Exactly right. Yes, exactly right. Both of it, Bolsheviks, Mensheviks, they came from the same source, what I call it, the landfill of history. There was a Russian Social Democratic Labor Party, RSDRP, from where that theories of socialism, the implementation of theories of socialism came from. And the high point was in 1903, when party had the second Congress to adopt platform how to convert capitalism into socialism. And there were two fractions there. One was led by Mr. Martov in his body, Pavel Axelrod, and the other one was led by Lenin. So the party of Martov and Axelrod wanted to do exactly what this guy wants to do. They say, well, we don't need to resort to violence. We can get this through democratic process. So if we gain power, then we can use government authority to destroy capitalism by overburdening it with taxation and regulations. Of course, Lenin didn't want to have anything to do with it. He wanted revolution now. He was referring to it like people don't live that long, okay? And it seems to be, he was absolutely correct. 100 years later, we have Mensheviks. I forgot to mention it when the party split. Lenin's fraction got a majority, one vote, just one vote. But they got a majority, and they start calling themselves Bolsheviks in Russian majority. And the other guys become Menshevik, what they call it, minority. That's where it came from. So that minority seems to be now is a Democratic Party. Yeah, that's exactly what they want to do. You can see it on everyday lives. They want to raise taxes. They impose impossible regulation on our economy.
Yep. That's
they
right.
do exactly what those Mensheviks wanted to do.
That's exactly right. Well, we got to take a commercial break, sir. When we come back, I've got a question over in my live audience from one of the audience members for you. And we'll talk. I want to talk to you and get your thoughts on who exactly the people are that voted for this party in New York City and this nominee in New York City. We'll be right back with Alexander Markovsky, who was born in the Soviet Union. And it's More War Monday.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. I want to thank you for all your support at wvwfoundation.com that helps make possible pushing out 24/7 content for free. Without your support, we'd have to put it all behind a paywall. But thanks to you and your support through our foundation, we're able to push it out for free as a broadcast service and broadcast ministry of WVW Foundation. Please consider going there and setting up an automatic monthly contribution, or go there and make an occasional contribution. If you prefer to support us through the mail, you'll find our mailing address there at wvwfoundation.com. You can also call and make your contribution over the phone by calling 901-825-0652. That's 901-825-0652. Again, all these details are available at wvwfoundation.com. Thank you for your support as we try to help people around the world understand the times through the lens of a Christian worldview.
For Donald Trump and then turned around and voted for a Democratic socialist. That's a real thing. Just like it was a real thing when those same Obama voters turned around and voted for Donald Trump too.
And congratulations for explaining just how terrible of a campaign Kamala Harris ran. I mean, she couldn't keep people who want to vote for socialists from voting for Donald Trump. Look, New York City has had, frankly, terrible governance for years. And now this narrow sliver of liberal, rich, white, female Democrats who nominated Mamdani, who have enough money to leave when he destroys the city, nominated this guy. The working class went for other people. But what he's going to do is end up destroying the city for the working class, defunding the police, emptying the jails, fighting against federal enforcement of our immigration laws. The rich liberals who voted for him can leave. The working class can't.
The Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about the war within. It's the war against communism. We're still fighting it, folks. You know, when my dad passed away in 2001, he thought that war had been won. And quite frankly, so did I. But it's been slowly and stealthily embedding itself in our society from pre-kindergarten, preschool, on up through our universities. And my guest today is a PhD of economic and political science, author, and a man that was born in the USSR in 1944, Alexander Markovsky. And Alex, I just don't understand it. That little clip there talked about people that some of the people that voted for Donald Trump voted for this guy. That is such a dramatic split in my mind. But I guess I'm just not understanding where we're at in this country, am I?
Well, it's surprising, of course. I don't know whether it's really true. You know, I don't really believe with public polling. You know that sometimes you get absolutely crazy numbers. Probably depends. Well, everything depends who is doing it and who is financing it. But speaking of people who voting for him, look, well, Donald Trump that's the people who are threatened with Donald Trump, who threatened them with jobs. Let me put it this way. And this guy offers them something for free. Well, look, why wouldn't you take it? If you want to be relatively wealthy in this country, you have to work hard. On the other hand, if you get for free a small apartment, a little bit food, a little bit that, a little bit this, and you don't have to work, for many people, it sounds very appealing. Therefore, I think there are many people in New York who would be happily voting for this guy because he promised them dough.
Yeah.
Whether he will deliver it or not, that's another story. You know, Bolsheviks also made a lot of promises to the Russians. If you're familiar with it, they promised that bread to hungry, peace to people, land to peasants. Nothing of that happened. So they get famine, they get wars, and the peasants didn't get land. So,
yeah, what really got my attention is seeing the video where he says, "I want the government to operate the grocery stores." Look, I've been in totalitarian countries where the means of production is controlled by the government, and grocery stores are mostly empty shelves.
You're correct. So if government could run enterprise better than capitalism, Soviet Union would be the most prosperous country ever.
Exactly.
But it didn't happen, right? So.
Exactly right. Well, we got a question from our audience. Let's go ahead and go over there. Our host is Shell. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Whit, sir.
Thank you, Shell. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Dr. Markovsky. My question is very similar to the Colonel's question about the Bolsheviks. So Democrats are proud of being socialists, but they get offended if you call them communists. But in my mind, the only difference between socialism and communism is scale. Can you please differentiate if there does exist one?
Well, I heard some people call this guy communist. Well, technically, and I want to emphasize technically, that's incorrect. But if you take the substance of it, as we just discussed, how these theories and practice came out from Russian Socialist Party, the difference in methods, not in substance. They disagree on the methods of destruction of capitalism. But they had no illusion that this system cannot be imposed voluntarily.
Yeah, I think I understand that. In your article, your new article, you talk about the philosophy of poverty. Could you pull the layers back, the curtain back on that idea once for the audience so they have an understanding of what you're talking about?
Well, what I've been talking about, that idea of equality in wealth is intrinsically self-contradictory. It's an oxymoron. It's utopian dreams. Wealth, by its nature, cannot be equal. And this light socialism that aims to replace inequality in wealth, well, we will replace it with equality in poverty. There is no other way. And when they talk about redistribution of wealth, which most of us believe that is the case with socialism, but ultimate objective of socialism, as I pointed out earlier, is actually destruction of wealth. Because that's how economic equality can be achieved. And you know what, I've been thinking about it. Karl Marx taught that socialism can be developed in most industrial countries. Looks like nowadays at USA. However, Lenin insisted that socialism should be imposed in Russia, which was agrarian and poor country. And now I come to thinking about, yes, if your end goal is universal poverty, why would you try to establish it in a rich country when you have to do so much work to destroy wealth, when you can go to poor country, which is already poor, and you have a much easier job. And as you can see, he was right.
Yeah, he was right. You mentioned earlier we talked a little bit about the people that voted for this guy in New York City, contrary to what the polls talk about in that little clip at the beginning of this segment, what I hear is that most of these people are white, wealthy, and that kind of fits because you're talking about Manhattan, basically, is most of the population. And those people are wealthy people. I mean, it costs a tremendous amount of money just to have a studio apartment in the Manhattan area. And so why would they want to grind their wealth into ashes, which is essentially what socialism does eventually?
That is the greatest mystery that I don't think anybody can answer that question. It happened in Russia. Bolsheviks were financed by rich people. I can tell you, my grandpa was wealthy. He's not really big wealth, but he's got 2 factories. And he was relatively wealthy guy. And he was hiding Bolsheviks in his basement. And he donated them money. By the way, he's Jewish. He was Jewish. So he donated them money. Of course, when Bolshevik took the power, they were, I would say, nice to him. They didn't execute him like many of his friends. He got community apartment instead. And everything else was expropriated. So you ask, why did he do it? I don't know. It sounds absolutely crazy. It sounds insane. But they're doing it.
Yeah. So your dad, your mother and father, your mother and father were party officials?
No, mother was not, but my dad was, because he was a manager of construction trust. And this kind of people must be members of the party. He became a member of the party, and he grew into, I would say, pretty high-ranking Communist Party official.
So how was your housing, Alex, when you were growing up with your dad being a party official like that? Did you all live in a community apartment like everybody else, or was there really stratification of some sort? I mean, I'm talking from the perspective of a kid that was growing up in America and would hear things. So I'm just trying to let you point out if I'm right, really.
Well, you can't compare to my house here, but I tell you what, we were privileged. We had a very nice apartment. So Daddy had a official car with a chauffeur. We were okay. We were okay.
How about the grocery store bit? Did he have to go to the grocery store the same way as everybody else, or was there a special one for government people?
Well, he has access to a special store where he could get some goods, but he was not at that high level that he could buy everything there.
So he's not. So you guys didn't have like the multiple mansions. What do they call the ones out in the country? Dachas out in the countryside and all that. He wasn't in that category.
No, he was not in that high. But nevertheless, we were. I would say we were privileged and had a relatively decent life.
Yeah, that kind of slaps down the whole idea behind Marx wanting everybody to be equal under the pure socialist system, and that's. I got to take a break again, but when we come back, I want to give you a chance to talk about that specifically. And it's really why it fails, really, because it's impossible to do it. And we'll talk about it once again with Alexander Markovsky here on the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday. We'll be right back.
nobody really knows who this guy is. I think that's the bottom line. He's only been a citizen for 7 years. He's been an assembly member, but somebody who was not really well known, only for a couple of years. And I think the more people learn about him, the more they are concerned. I mean, this is obviously somebody who will say or do anything to get elected or to get into college. But aside from that, it's his policies that are incredibly dangerous. I mean, he wants to turn New York City into a little communist Cuba. He wants to seize the means of production, which is right out of Karl Marx's communist playbook. He's somebody who wants to take over New York City supermarkets. I imagine he wants to ration food as well. I mean, this is somebody who is completely a leftist like we've never seen in New York, and we've had the likes of Bill de Blasio and others. It's really concerning. I think the more people get to know him, and I'm hopeful, more people get to know him, the more we'll make sure that he is rejected at the ballot box come November.
Yeah, that's right.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're talking about the war within with Marxism, communism, socialism. This guy that's the Democrat nominee for mayor, Mamdani, says he's a democratic socialist. But when he spouts all the words, it's right out of Marxist Das Kapital, I think, if I understand correctly. I mean, it's been a while since I read it. And my guest today is Dr. Alexander Markovsky, who's an author, senior fellow at the London Center for Policy and Research, and was born in the Soviet Union and grew up there. So of all the people we could talk to about this guy that's the Democrat nominee up there, Alex is probably the most knowledgeable walking the planet today that I have access to anyway. And I appreciate you joining us today, Alex.
Thank you.
In your article, you talk a little bit about an intellectual stagnation in the American political dialogue as potentially one of the root causes as to why Americans are willingly voting socialism apparently in New York City. What do you mean by that? And what's your thinking of it?
You said the root causes, I think. The root causes. Because, look, if you look at the New York City, nowadays New York City, it's almost socialist place. There are high taxation, high regulations, everything that Mensheviks been talking about. And so it's a really fertile ground for we call them communists, but I call them those Mensheviks. But as we talked about earlier, it's technicalities. You know, in the essence, you know, they try to do the same thing. They use different methods, but the object is the same: destroy capitalism, and make sure that everybody lived in poverty. Everybody is equal. And if you look at the electorate, you know, individuals who you see many elected officials who are demonstrably unqualified and fail to possess even basic understanding of history, economic, or critical thought. Few even, I call it, deserve the title, distinguish themselves for their inconceivable stupidity. And so what would you expect? They're worthless, they adopt Marxism, and can hardly contain the if and envy of the American enterprise. And in many instances, that question, it's moral validity. So our problem is, the biggest problem is the absence of an ideological counterweight. Mm-hmm. We fail in education. And if you take a Republican Party, Republican Party doesn't seem to have any ideology, while the Democratic Party adopted Marxism, very powerfully the ideology. It's very simple. You don't have anything. It's not because you're stupid. It's not because you're lazy. It's not because you're poorly educated. It's because that someone across the street exploited you. So what you have to do, go there and take it. So it's easy to understand for anybody. And if you look at Republican Party, there is no counterweight. And the way I see it, if party has ideology, this party in the business of persuasion. The party has no ideology, is in the business of fundraising. That's what's happening. So first of all, Republican Party has to acquire ideology and acquire certain level of education that it can confront this kind of people. And it's not difficult really to confront them because they're just pedestrian opportunists. There is no Lenin, Trotsky, there's no those people of great intelligence and education and organizational skills that created Bolshevik revolution. These people are nobody. So it wouldn't be that difficult to do it, but somehow we don't do it.
So when you say the Republican Party doesn't have an ideology, it's not, what I hear is it's not enough to just stand on the platform that on how the United States was founded, what the intention of the founders was in our founding documents and what our law has evolved into. It's not and the desire to be able to think and live freely and be able to be prosperous if you go out and work hard for it. That's not enough. How do you what type of ideology has to be overlaid on that, though? Because to me, that is an ideology. However, it's not a political party ideology. It's an American ideology.
Right. But for political party, you need something more. If you talk about again, I come back to that again and again. It's education. You want a redistribution of wealth. Capitalism made tremendous job in redistribution of wealth. Just remember, during Industrial Revolution, millions of peasants, poor, absolutely destitute, went to the city to work 12 hours a day, no weekends, no holidays, for very little. Today, their grandchildren have houses, two-car garage, children in college, they have vacations, they travel, they become themselves, they become bourgeoisie, what communists told. So when it comes to the distribution of wealth, capitalism did a marvelous job. You just have to explain it. And it didn't achieve it by taking from somebody else. It has achieved it by increasing productivity, to making people richer. You remember Henry Ford started paying his workers $5 a day at that time. That's an enormous amount of money because he had to sell his car to somebody.
Right.
The productivity was so high that he was producing mass production and no buyers. That's how capitalism works. He enriched all of us, making us all richer. So you have to keep explaining it to people. You want a distribution of wealth, what can better be than capitalism?
Yeah, I think our manufacturing base going into World War II was poised, and World War II enabled it more than it would have been naturally, I think, was poised to create the wealth that created the middle class here in America that people talk about all the time, which is purely based on capitalism with minimal government involvement. Even when World War II was going on, the government didn't run the factories. They asked the owners of the factories to manufacture things for them, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I seem to remember the Soviet Union had to. We had to produce things for the Soviet Union to be able to use, if I remember
exactly
correctly.
Right, and made a huge contribution in their victory.
So how do I explain that to these college level and 30-somethings that want to vote for socialism? Because as they say, I've heard this many times in my life, you can vote socialism in, but you got to shoot your way out.
Well, may somewhat disagree with you. If socialism takes the roots, it cannot be defeated. It self-destructs.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't defeat it, because when people start working for the government, that motto, Bolsheviks' motto, who doesn't work, that doesn't eat, becomes who doesn't obey, that doesn't eat. If your employer is the government, if you do not obey, you will starve to death. If you get fired, you don't get another job.
So what happens to those people that lose their job under socialism?
Well, what happened? They starve to death or crawl back and apologize because they have to feed their families. But the most innocent, it doesn't have to happen, because everybody understands what can happen if you become enemy of socialism.
And all these years since the Bolsheviks took over in Russia and then in China, the United States has kind of been the bulwark of the place where people could escape to. You know, one of the things that I'm worried about is that, exactly.
One of them is talking to you. Yes,
exactly right. So what happens to the rest of the world if the United States falls into total socialism?
Right. But right now, we're almost there, by the way. Just look at the war. Look at Latin America. Okay? It's becoming socialist. Look at Africa. It's becoming socialist. So if something happened here, there is no place to go.
Yeah, exactly right. Well, we got to take another commercial break here. One more, Alex. But when we come back, we'll see another clip about division and the Marxist tactics that go along with that, that we're seeing happening. But I want to get your take on whether the Republican elected officials have actually enabled this momentum towards socialism in the United States by the policies that they've compromised on and agreed to, which also is enabled by this division, like critical race theory and those kinds of tactics. We'll be right back with Alexander Markovsky, author and senior fellow for the London Center for Policy and Research, on the Rob Maness Show.
But with Brandon, it's always cutting edge stuff happening in the world, and it's not just from the political angle, because you can get that on other platforms, but it's always from the biblical angle. So you're dealing with a guy that loves Jesus, you're dealing with a guy that's very intelligent, you're dealing with a guy that is cutting edge conservatism, and you're dealing with a guy that wants to be biblical all at the same time. And so for that reason alone, I hope many, many people will not just lift up his ministry in prayer, but will also financially get behind it, because from the angle I'm trying to describe, he really is the only game in town. And we desperately need it in these last days. Can I get an amen to that?
The New York City Police Department, Marie. I wouldn't advise walking Manhattan after he gets rid of the police force.
Just to jump in, Mom Johnny. Just to jump in. Hold on. Hold on. Mamdani advocated for defunding NYPD in 2020. He's since said his goal is reform, not defunding.
Exactly.
And then also just
you guys are doing that again. It's the whole Harris playbook.
Just one more thing. Point of order. He just said he didn't want to tax white people specifically, just higher income neighborhoods that do happen to be majority white.
He literally wrote it in his
That's
statement, Omar. He literally wrote it down. Are you letting him get off the hook?
White? No, I am
That shows the
saying
desperation of the
that he
time.
said that, but not on the basis of race specifically. I'm not saying he didn't say that.
That's right.
He did say that,
Okay,
but
I
not
think
on
you
the
need to
basis
reread it.
of race specifically. Scott.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. Here it's More War Monday, and we're talking about the war with communism within the country that we thought we had won, but really it's just been slowly, quietly taking hold. And now we have a Democratic nominee from the Democrat Party for mayor of the world's most capitalist city in the world, the financial capital of the world, it's been called, New York City. And my guest today is Dr. Alexander Markovsky, who is an author, has written books about this. He was born in the Soviet Union and raised there, fully understands communism, Marxism, and what all these terms mean when this guy says, I want to make white people pay more taxes. That's really a critical theory, methodology and strategy and tactics set that's intent on dividing society by, in our case, they couldn't do it just by class, right, Alex? So they had to come up with other ways to do it. Race is one, gender, the LGBTQ plus, all of that ideology is all really part of this Marxism that's called critical theory and that process. So that little clip there reminded me that the socialists appear to have control of most of the media apparatus, except for small shows and networks like the one I'm on right now, Worldview Tube. And that is one of the things that really enables a lot of this too. And but the first question I wanted to ask you, why do you think they picked New York City? Because this isn't an accident or just happenstance, is it?
Well, because if I was in their place, I would pick up New York as well. That place is already almost there. It has a very high taxation, excessive government regulations. It fits perfectly into paradigm of socialism. That's why they picked it. And if they're successful in New York City, they can use the same technique, in other cities. There is Chicago, there is St. Louis, perhaps even Los Angeles, that they can succeed. While we had that break, what I've been thinking? I think the greatest irony of it is that Russian people fought civil war for 3 years, and with about 15 million casualties, they fought Bolshevism. While Americans are willing to vote it in through democratic process. Isn't it sounds absurd? But
it is absurd. That's why when I was introduced to you, I'm like, heck yes, I want to get Alexander Markovsky on this show to spend an hour with me talking about this, because we need people like you to help folks understand that may not be paying attention just how critically important it is that we fight against this and don't let it in the door any more than it already is, and push it back out while we still can. Because as you said, once it's in and it's taken a hold, it can't be removed except for over time. And what is that? What does that mean? You mentioned in your article that there's it's almost like a shelf life for socialism once it takes fully hold. Why is that, and how long is it?
Well, I estimated about 70 years based on Soviet experience. Probably it's what it takes to distribute the wealth and eliminate it eventually. Because if you do not, as we discussed it earlier, if you do not generate wealth, sufficiently fast, then population is growing, and eventually you kind of run out of what Margaret Thatcher said, you run out of other people's money. Well, I would say other people's wealth, which is basically the same thing.
Yeah, she was exactly right, wasn't she?
Absolutely right. No question about it. She was right.
When, well, I've got a hand over in the audience. Let's go ahead and take that real quick, and then I'll ask you my question. Go ahead, Sean.
We have Wib again, sir.
Thank you, Shal. Thank you, Colonel. Thank you, Dr. Markowski. And this might be outside your expertise, but is there something special we should be anticipating, considering his yes, he's a socialist, communist, but he's also very into the Islamicists, an Islamic sympathizer. Is there anything out of the ordinary of just your everyday generic communism or socialism that we should be looking out for?
Well, I don't know what we should look at, but there is a correlation between religion and communism. Communism is also religion. What religion promises? They promise you heaven. After you gone, there will be some other life, much better than what you have currently. But communism tells you the same thing. They say you have to work, you have to sacrifice yourself, but in the future, somewhere in the future, you know, you can have anything you want according to your needs. For people with, I would say, limited abilities, can have unlimited, can satisfy their unlimited needs. You know, isn't it a religion? It's the same thing. That's why he invoked Islam. He might invoke some other religion because there is a great similarity with communism, with the theories of communism.
One of the arguments that I hear, and I'm hearing a lot when I say he's an Islamist Marxist or an Islamist communist, is that, well, he can't be Islamist because he supports the transgender ideology and the LGBTQ community, and those kind of things. What's your answer to that when you hear that kind of really weak argument?
Anything to get elected. But again and again, I'm not really concentrating on him personally. Mm-hmm. He's a product of his party. And he, as an individual, he might not represent much of a danger. But the party represents enormous danger to the United States. And that's what I try to aim at it. And trying to say, gentlemen, just remember, a major political party of the United States wants to change the way we live. That's what you should concentrate on.
Should we be here concerned that we're not hearing from Democrat Party leaders that this guy doesn't represent our party? Because we're not hearing that.
Well, probably they don't want to associate with him until his victory, but there are plenty of Democrats, they call them social Democrats, which socialists. Mm-hmm. They call themselves socialists, but Bernie Sanders, for example, that's Cortez and others, there is a squad. There's plenty of people in the Democratic Party that speak openly against capitalism. And as we discussed earlier today, the capitalism and our democracy are intertwined. So you take out one, you take out the other. So they really take anti-American position. And come to think about it, you know, if, let's say, we have fascists advocating change in America, we would deal with them probably quite ruthlessly. So is there much difference? These people also try to undermine America.
Yeah, this ideology is responsible for millions and millions of more deaths in the 20th century than fascism, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. So they try to advance a similar ideology.
So Alex, what's your advice to American voters as they come up and look at this man and his policies, and they're talking with their family members, their friends, their fellow workers about who to vote for?
Well, first I will tell them, first look at your party, at the Democratic Party. What's their position on the issue? And why they support someone who wants to destroy our way of life. But most importantly, that's education, of course. You have to educate people. These people have, look, we have democratic socialism, and somebody has to tell them, well, it's just the same thing. It's different method of getting to the same point. So don't pay much attention to the word democratic, because by the way, that social democratic party from came Lenin and Trotsky and all of them, they were also democratic, by the way. In the name had word democratic in it. So just because they have a word democratic doesn't mean they are. That's what I think. Most important thing is education. Everything else will fill in.
Yeah. I think our weakness in our education system has really hurt us over the last 40 years, especially, and because they've told us. I mean, Nikita Khrushchev came here and told us. He said, "We're not going to defeat you in war. We're going to defeat you by taking a generation of children." Through your education system. And that's what we see playing out before our very eyes. So we got about a minute left, Alex. Tell folks where they can find your writings at, and find you, if there's a place they can find you on the web or social media.
Well, unfortunately, my book was removed from circulation. Amazon priced it at $520 a book.
Oh.
And nobody would buy it.
Exactly.
We have free press. Don't forget.
That's right. Free. Well, thank you, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you very much for inviting me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. And I'll send you a link once we get the post-production show loaded up. Tomorrow's Training Tuesday, folks. And I've got Jackson Lehmeyer. He's a key person on the president's White House Faith Council. Should be an exciting conversation. I'll see you then on the Rob Maness Show here on World View Tube.